Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Good evening, everyone. I am Shelo Jap Manalo. Together with my teammates, Mary Joy Lasco, Gio Marie Almasan, Rico Litawa, and Marnel Javier Valentin, and we are the record keepers. Let me start sharing with you our presentation entitled Analysis on Why Women and Children Are Vulnerable for Human Trafficking in India. But first, let me introduce to you the additional members of our team. Next. This is Anna and Jacob. They are siblings and they are being forced for prostitution and child labor in their own country, India. Join us on the journey of finding the solution for Anna and Jacob for achieving their justice and rights. Next. Guided by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, our objective is to determine the variables why women and children are prone to human trafficking. Next, to determine the roots of human trafficking in India. And last is to raise awareness regarding human trafficking and how to create a solution to prevent it. We believe that with this solution, SDG 1, which is no poverty, and SDG 6, peace, justice, and strong institutions will be achieved. Next. Problem. Despite being the world's largest democratic republic, India suffers from widespread poverty and a lack of sufficient education, leading to a slew of human rights violations, particularly against women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow presenters, join us on our journey to find the solution on why women and children are vulnerable for human trafficking in India. Next.
So the next is the presentation of the data. Human trafficking victims' influence on global peace and security continues to grow. It disrupts the economy and puts all countries, including India, at risk. This study aims to discover the primary causes of the human trafficking, why children and women like Jacob and Anna are vulnerable by investigating the datasets that has been gathered. Next. This slide, this chart shows the total number of female victims based on their age. It shows the female over the age of 18 have the total number of 2,907 victims when compared to the victims under the age of 18 with a total number of 1,172 victims. In the next chart, it reveals that the majority of the male victims at the age of 18 are under the age of 18 are total of 1,742 victims, indicating that they are minor, while the male victims above the age of 18 are total of 795 victims. Next. As a result, there are more victims above the age of 18 than male victims, but there are also male victims under the age of 18 than female victims. Next. This slide, it shows a different reason or purposes of the human trafficking, which is composed of forced labor, sexual exploitation for prostitution, domestic servitude, and forced marriage. As you can see in the chart, sexual exploitation, which is 54.6%, is the most common reason of human trafficking and takes the bigger portion of the pie. According to the Nation Office on Drugs and Crime 2009 report, the most common reason for human trafficking is sexual exploitation, which is primarily affects women and girls. Next. The next common reason is forced labor, which is 29.9%. And according to the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish human trafficking in persons, particularly to women and children, the majority of the victims are still women, children, and men are now account for a bigger proportion of total victims than they did a decade ago. Between 2012 and 2014, around 4 out of every 10 victims were trafficked for forced labor, with men accounting for 63% of the victims. Next. And lastly, the least common purpose of trafficking is forced marriage, which is 6%, means the victims are being kidnapped for the purpose of marriage, which likely the most victims are female. Next. This chart shows the victims of sexual exploitation over time, which is the most common reason for trafficking. In the year 2014 to 2016, female victims increased up to 70%. But up to year 2018, the proportion of the female victims who were sexually exploited has been steadily decreasing, while the number of the male victims has been steadily increasing. Next. The next chart show the male and female victims who are children that are forced to work against their will. Male victims are decreasing in year 2018 and female victims are slightly increased. It is stated to the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish human trafficking persons, particularly to women and children, that the victims of forced labor accounted for 63% of all victims between year 2012 and 2014, which is likely similar to the line chart. It also stated in the bar graph earlier that the majority of the male victims are under the age of 18. Next. In this chart, it shows how traffickers use their victims according to their needs. The methods of the control employed by the traffickers on male and female victims are shown. While male victims are subjected to similar form of abuse, female victims are more vulnerable to psychological, physical, and sexual assault. Next. This slide, it shows that the false promises, labor-related practices such as withholding wages and excessive working hours are routinely used to control male victims of human trafficking. All of the findings shows that the majority of the trafficked males were victims of labor exploitation, whereas the majority of the female victims are the victims of sexual exploitation. That's all. Next.
As the proponents try to find out the solution for achieving Anna and Jacob's rights and justice, they come up with the results telling us that there are so many women and children like them in India who have become a victim of human trafficking. As we take a look at the charts showing the percentage of the purposes of human trafficking, we can see that 53.6 of them are being used for sexual exploitation, followed by labor exploitation with 29.4%. And next is domestic servitude with 9.4%. And last is the forced marriage with 6%. In fact, the findings also show that females over 18 are the most vulnerable on human trafficking and sexual exploitation. On the other hand, human trafficking on the other hand, males under 18 years of age who are children are being trafficked and being used for labor exploitation. Therefore, there is no doubt that women and children are vulnerable to human trafficking in India because they can be easily used for sexual and labor exploitation. Next.
For the recommendation, according to UNODC website, human trafficking is considered as the second largest organized crime in India. Human trafficking is still a major issue in India despite the fact that it is banned under Indian law. This analysis recommends first to establish penalty law or punishment that are fair and cannot be resolved through money or power, or to organize an organization which can look up to the issues and situation which will help the victims to achieve their justice and rights. Second, the team recommends the government to provide more job openings and works for the citizen to lessen the needs of wrongdoings and violation in the country. With this, we can give Anna and Jacob a better life that they deserve also to all the victims of human trafficking in the country India. That's all. Thank you.